Good evening, everyone. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And tonight I'm going to relax and kind of kick back with a good friend of mine who I hardly know at all. His name is Aaron Adler. And I call him a friend because he works very hard on the same projects that I work on. And he's a good friend to many of us, promoting and supporting technically, and with his great partner, Andy DeBala, in the Neighborhood News studio. Aaron Adler has made a tremendous contribution to exposing the truth in this country, to helping people to understand our real history, and also to provide to me what's a perspective that I never had before. A man who's spent some time in Ghana, a man who's invested in some property to help people get educated, and doing all kinds of good things that I want to learn a little bit more about tonight. So trying to keep it light and easy tonight as I get to know my friend Aaron a little bit better. So without further ado, let's welcome Aaron Adler to the scene. Good morning, good evening, Aaron.
Hi, John. This is such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I knew this day would come. It's been a wild journey here on Team W, but I knew one day we'd go one-on-one and get an hour to really go into things. I feel like I need 100 hours. I started going on my list, and I think it's just like I got to put the pen down and sit back, like you're saying, because so much for us to talk about together. I think we will keep it light, but there's some topics that if I get too far into them, because I get too excited with you and the research and what you've meant to me and what this journey of being an Osprey, has meant to me. I really will try to keep it light, but man, this research is anything but light, as you know better than anyone, right?
Yes, and regretfully, I have to join you in saying, yeah, we got to do what we got to do. But let's start off with some basic stuff. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? And what type of a background do you have before you got into the neighborhood news studio business?
Wow. Well, I'm from Metro Detroit area, just another Michigander. I grew up, in upper middle class family there. My mother is a lawyer, or was in the legal industry, and my father, doctor, and got a great education there in the Metro Detroit area. Went on to Michigan State University, where I spent 8 years. I got a undergrad, a bachelor's and a master's degree at Michigan State. Although the truth is, really, I stuck around to get the master's degree because of my commitment to the Frisbee team. That was, my real passion there in college was the ultimate Frisbee team. I don't know if that's ever come up in the podcast before, but I needed an excuse to stick around and play Frisbee in college. So I went and got a whole master's degree in a sense. But yeah, that's, in a nutshell, Michigan guy. And then I went off to Ghana, certainly on a study abroad trip, my first time, just a normal kind of trip that you take in college. A lot of people probably take study abroad trips. Maybe it's kind of a younger generation thing. I'm not sure. If they did that at William and Mary you went to, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Right? I did go to William and Mary, but we didn't have abroad trips, but my sister did. She got to spend a year at the Sorbonne, and I was always jealous of that. But no, I was down in Billiesburg, as we called it, walking up and down Dog Street.
Yeah, it's all the rage now. All the kids do it, right?
Yeah.
And Andy's moving around here. They, so I went to Ghana, and then, I took another trip there and another trip and another trip. And I used to think I'd go to every country in Africa. And instead I pretty much just went to Ghana 50 times or 40 to 50 times. And, I met my wife over there, who I think you all maybe have seen on some shows and stuff. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I could get into it further, but, yeah, I mean, Ghana's quite a story. Absolutely. There's the whole Ghana, double life at this point. So,
well, yeah. And you have kids, am I right?
Yep. 4 of them. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Oh boy.
I mean, the last few years, let me tell you, the youngest is 3, the oldest is 11, and it wavers back and forth between which one's more of a, takes more of our time and more of our effort and everything. But yeah, I got the kids. I do have a day job too. This is a hobby for myself also. Certainly Neighborhood News Hour as enthusiastic as I am with everything we've been doing here. Neighborhood News Studio. Sorry, Andy wanted me to make sure I say it right. Get that studio on there. Definitely, I'm a regular guy that I'm very organically from the chat. I'm pointing to the chat because it's on my screen right here in front of me. But I really hope we do at least get a chance to talk about my journey as an Osprey and meeting you more like seeing you online, and George, and just that whole process, because it's like it's been so incredible the last few years. Just the last 2 years since I've found your channel, your previous channel, George's channel, everything, and certainly the kids and the family. I'm having kids and raising them in the midst of all the research and the learning that's gone on. I mean, life never slows down, right? Here we are in 2021. So
Yeah, it's amazing, and every day, it seems like every day's bringing new challenges, but somehow we survive, and another day comes. So you just have to have a basic faith that the sun will come up tomorrow, and get through today, even though sometimes it's very discouraging. I am. I'm very grateful to you, Aaron, because you gave me a big boost. You may not know this or not, but there was a time about a year ago when I got demonetized from YouTube, and you started supporting me with Patreon, I think it was, and
yep.
I was like, who's sending me all that money every month? And it was you,
$50. Oh
neighborhood.
my gosh, that never got his $25, John. You were worth
You and
$1.
Neighborhood News Hour were scraping into the bottom of your pockets to support me, and I'll never forget it. It may not be apparent, but emotionally, sometimes these shows can be quite a roller coaster, and you think,
Now,
oh
yeah.
my God, it's going to crash. I can't keep it going. It's just too much, and then you find that somebody's putting some wind beneath your wings, so to speak, and it's all it takes, just the indication that somebody values your work. And so I'm grateful to you for that, and for everything you've done ever since then. So okay, so let's start off with that. And how did you get involved in either me or George? I assume you found George first, but you tell it your way.
Before we get started, I definitely don't want to put off like I'm a Mark Kulak or a Bill Taylor or any of these guys, who are really professional researchers with their own websites and everything like that. I think I've learned a few things and I've come pretty far in these last couple of years, but meeting you and George, or finding you and George, and embracing to myself that this was going to be something I was going to do, because I found you guys. I'll tell you even the day, June 9th, Epstein Columbus Connections, George Webb on your porch, what I presume is now your porch. I don't know exactly where he was, right? But June 9th, 2019, and even when I think about it, it's not even 2 years, and I at that moment, I watched that one twice, and I was like, wow, who is this guy and what is this? And he said a lot of stuff I have no idea. And then I watched another one, right? And I got very lucky because you came in right about then too. If I know you came in before that, but I found you guys right when you and George started doing those 2 and 3 hour a day shows that you used to do day after day after day.
Yeah, that was fun. I tell you, I'm nostalgic for those days, because George and I could sit down for 2 hours and almost not even take a breath. Just keep on and keep on, and me exploring his amazing mind, and trying to package it in a way that I could understand it and then retell it to somebody else. That process was so joyful for me, because how many times do you get to play with somebody that has a mind like George has? And I was thrilled with those early days. I mean, I was on George's channel for a while before I started my own. The whole idea of my channel was to back him up, because he got terminated from YouTube. So I said, oh, well, we can't have that. I'm starting a channel, and we're gonna make George welcome here. And he's always welcome to this day. And I don't put any restrictions on him. I don't say, George, you can't say this, you can't say that. He's got the right to say what he thinks is important, just because he is a very valuable thinker and observer and investigator, and you name it. He's a real journalist, and so I thank God that I have him in my life too. I feel the same as you do. Very, very grateful to have met George Webb.
Well, I'm going to come in with a metaphor, and sometimes metaphors don't work the way you want them to, right? And I'm not going to try to go X-rated here or anything, folks. But, you asked about, love and family and all those things, right? And I'm not trying to get too goofy, but like you have that young love and passion in every way, that you do with a spouse or you do with a friend or whatever. And you can go all day, you can go all night, but you can't do that forever. Eventually the relationship matures into something that needs to be more focused and purposeful. Not that those old broadcasts weren't purposeful, right? Like I was able to onboard. You guys gave me that opportunity because I found you then, and I was able to watch those and watch them again. And I'll tell you, John, after I met George Webb the first time, I turned my car radio on and listened to music. And then I thought, oh my God, you know what? I haven't listened to music since before I found George and John on YouTube. Because I was so intensely into you guys and those long broadcasts that it became my whole, like, I got to learn this. 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 Right. And that's why, like, a lot of these people in the chat are the same way, and I know a lot of that pours through in the way I approach this. And obviously, I feel like I've been very fortunate to be skipped to the front of the line in a way by George, to be able to sit by his side and lead this weekly show or this daily show that we're doing now and everything. And I sent you a couple Patreon messages at first when he first came out here, because I felt like almost like I'm like taking him from you, really, and I was like, oh man. And I don't know if the audience felt that way too, right? That it was like, like George isn't in Maryland now. Now he's moving around. He's in Michigan with these guys. Oh, Aaron's got a red wig on. He's a goofball sometimes. He's not as mature as John. This is different. And it was, and it still was like, there was a reason this all needed to happen, and yourself, you can't do a 2-hour show, 3-hour show of just that with George anymore. I don't think you'd want to. I don't think anybody, we couldn't do that anymore, right? Osprey Nation now is too far along to be doing that, right? We've mobilized in a different way. And it was a beautiful thing at its time. And it's like now you guys have this relationship and partnership where you've got all of us on your backs. And I'll go on to my next metaphor, right? I said it the other day when you were on the show. It's like McDuff, your father, right? I don't know if you got a picture nearby. He was a nose tackle, and you're always next to George when we first all meet you. So like George is taller than you, when you always don't understand how broad you often. I think you're, we're like, when people meet you in person, I always say like, oh, well, I never knew how big John was. He's a broad guy. He's, it's like, yeah, his dad was a nose tackle. He ran a defense, right? And metaphorically, as we experience the research and how much of it there is, we can't afford having you guys in the same room at the same time. You got to run the defense and he's running the offense. And that's what's going on here, and it's like, we need the variety in the different shows and to be able to come together at different times. But us in the chat, the Osprey Nation, who is now the wings behind you guys, I feel like has mobilized in such an effective way with the history and the current events. When I say the offense and the defense, right? Like the book train to me is the history, and that's going to defend anything that we're going to do out here. Anybody we're going to find, any B words we're going to find, any I words we're going to find, any fort this or fort that we're going to find. There is going to be a historical substantiation that's going to be in that book train to make sure that the defense is there to back up George Webb while he's out there, throwing his passes, and I don't know if that metaphor makes sense to everybody. I hope it makes sense a little bit, but we're so, I know we've been bicycled, you've been bicycled, George has been kicked off, you've been kicked off, but like, man, this is a force, John. Like, I know you and George don't get to go 2.5, 3 hours anymore, and that the audience kind of wishes for that. In those days when you guys were doing the charrette a couple weeks ago, it was like old times. It's like, oh, if they could just hang out all day, every day and talk, but man, we're a force now, John. Like, you've smashed quite a few pieces off that CIA. I'm very confident. And George Webb, he lost a lot today with his Patreon, but I see it as a victory, frankly, that like we are hurting them bad. And we can get into the research, we can get into the books, or we can just have a little family night at this point, because it's like, I know that you guys did it. And I want to just lay it on the table that I know I'm evidence that you guys did it, right? And if I took George away from Maryland for some time when he was in the studio, it was whatever it had to be, because like, you and George don't want it to be about yourselves. You want it to be about the community. And I don't know a lot of everything. I'm 37 years old, right? A lot of these books Andy's bringing on the book train. Like, I'd be lying if I could tell you that I could give an A+ book report. I read them. I listened, a lot of the time I get lost in the live chat talking to my friends while you're reading, John. And, it doesn't sink in maybe as well as it needs to, but I know that as a community together, we've got all the information and nothing's getting past us. And it's just like, wherever this goes, YouTube, schmootube. I don't want to get, I know we got strikes on channels here, there, and everywhere, but we are a force. And I know that, if you didn't know that, John, I see people in the chat saying he was a fullback. Was he a fullback? He was a nose tackle, right?
Hey, you don't have to play just one side of the ball.
That's right. Yeah,
my dad was a fullback, and he was also a tackle on the defensive side. I can't say when he was what. He played 4 years at Loomis and 4 years at Harvard, and whether he was actually engaged in either one of those at any one time, I don't know. But I do know that I asked him what he was, and he said he was a fullback. But also, he also played defense, and I think if someone about a year ago was kind enough to send me an actual program of a Loomis versus Choate football game in which my dad was a player. And I think he was listed as a nose tackle in that particular game. So, but especially back then, they would play both sides of the field. So both answers are correct.
You're right. I guess that program is the one I must have seen, because that picture like stuck in my head, because it's like he's pretty big in that picture. It's like, ooh, man, like John's dad really was. I'll bet he laid some dudes out on the field. I'm sure.
Well, he was clearly the biggest guy on the Harvard football team of 1942. You see a picture of the squad, and whenever they take a picture that he's in it, he's always the big guy in the middle, in the back row. So if you ever want to find my dad in one of these pictures, just look for the guy whose head is about 6 inches higher than everyone else's. Anyway, but that he wasn't quite 6'4", which is what I am. But back in those days, that was huge. So, and yeah, speaking of Detroit, he was recruited by the Detroit Lions when he was in after the war. He declined that so he could go to law school. But so that tells you he was a real football player. But he didn't. Something happened, and he didn't want to talk about football, other than when I'd see a picture, I'd say, "What's this?" Well, anyway, that's my dad. Let me get back to what you were saying about the.
Can I gush McDuff like 3-5 more minutes? Give me, John, because this is like before we take it too far away. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you this, and I said it in as many words as I could in Patreon and other ways. Like, this has been, reaching through the camera, I've never been there to give you a hug or whatever, I'm so glad, actually. Like, we were in Gettysburg, we were a few miles away a few months ago, and George came and hung out, and we were like, who should go, what should we do, and I was like, Andy, you should go, man, you should go down there. I'll go back and try my best to run the studio, go and have a good time. And it was a great decision. I mean, what a great help he's been. It's been an incredible thing, right? But McDuff, your dad is your dad, and you gave him to us. And there is a vulnerability there that you have experienced. I'm sorry to flip the interview on you. Give me 2 minutes to flip it on you if I could, right? Because I really wanted to ask you this, just that, like, what's it been like, to like give your dad to the world? I've jumped in Osprey Nation just to, get on this side of the camera. And I think, you're comfortable on the camera. You've done Shakespeare and all those other things. Performing isn't something that maybe embarrasses you as much as maybe other people who aren't used to it, right? But like, you gave your dad to the world. You gave your dad to us. And there's consequences with that, in the sense that, like, people are going to take their own story of your dad and make it mean something to them. And he's your dad, right? And I sent you a quick Patreon message when I first met George. It's just like, man, I'm going to have to talk about McDuff. I can't hang out with George Webb and not say things like McDuff University. Like, I don't know if you heard me caught me say that on the Belton Road show, right? Like McDuff University and all these other things. It's like, you gave him to us and we take him and we run with him now. And I know it makes you happy, and I'm sure there's times where it's like, I wish that person didn't say that, or did, I don't know. It's everything can't be perfect all the time once you give yourself to the world like that, and I know we're not the world here, but in the sense, the live chat and the community we've created is, you gave him up to us and we've taken him and loved him. And wow, I don't know. My dad's a great guy too, man, but like, I don't know. I don't know if I can give my dad's story and anybody in a live chat's going to start a YouTube channel and subscribe to 5,000 or 10,000 or whatever on that, like, what's it been like to give your dad to us, because it's been amazing.
Thanks for the question. I would say that it's been a tremendous gift that it turns out I gave to myself. And in that, by sending him out into the world, into the universe, and then, really hundreds, if not thousands of people have, as you say, they've got their own concept of who he was, and they ask questions and they have ideas that they float by me. And, I think that what really has happened is that it's given me the opportunity to flesh out the history that actually is his career, and to understand what really happened to him. You see, as you know, it's very, very personal, in that my dad died in June of 1971, 50 years ago this June. And we were never told anything about his career. There was these mysterious things, like when he got hepatitis. It was like he came home and he told my mom, and as she told us, that he had consumed tainted shellfish. Those were the words, exactly, word for word. And that was all he would say. And so, it's taken me, first I had to have a career. I had to, make a living for 30 or 40 years. And then, but all these things in the back of my mind, I never could let go of. And so finally I started to study it. And the first thing that you realize is what, that doesn't make any sense, because if he had been out eating some shellfish that was dangerous, there would have been a big report about it. There would have been health inspectors at the restaurant. That we would have, there would have been an insurance claim. There would have been all of this stuff, and it just wasn't believable. But it wasn't until, this past year, when we read Stephen Kinzer's book, Poisoner in Chief, about Sidney Gottlieb, that we realized that this was part of Alan Dulles trying to control my dad's mind. And they had a report from Sandoz Labs, the inventors of LSD, that for some reason, people that had hepatitis were more susceptible, 10 times more susceptible to mind control techniques than your average person. And now that when we have the context of what my dad was doing, was he was taking over the custody of all the special ops files for all the agencies, whether it was Army, CIA, DIA, anybody, they all had to go according by Kennedy's order, into my dad's file cabinet. And that, put him in such a vulnerable position for somebody like an Alan Dulles to want to be able to control him, to say to him, hey, you're going to go and get those files and bring them over to me, at 8 o'clock tonight behind the bowling alley. You'll hand them to Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith then, gets them. And that kind of violation of his duty he could never do. He grew up in a way, in a time when, right was right and wrong was wrong. He grew up with a very strong Catholic background, the kind of Catholicism in which if you tell a lie, you could go to hell. That kind of moral pressure to do the right thing was imposed on him somehow in his youth, to the point where even when somebody apparently superior to him, like an Alan Dulles, would say, that he wanted him to do this, he wanted him to say, run the rat lines from Laos to Saigon, and he say, he had to say no. He said, I'm not going to do that, because morally, what you're doing is you're providing addictive drugs to American soldiers who are going to spend their little bit of money on these drugs and get addicted and come home. And he could see it all, because he had been through World War II. He knew what opium addiction does. He'd been to Shanghai. He'd been to New Guinea. He'd been through the whole. He was at Espiritu Santo, the island where Pappy Boyington and his Flying Tigers were based. He would have known, the dangers and so morally he just couldn't go along with it. And the reason that I have to offer him to everybody is that it's like we need to get our good role models back. We need to get our I want to be like him feeling, I want to lead the charge. I want to be in the vanguard of the fight for individual liberty. That's why I'm reading this book here. It's right on my stand. I'll just show it to you. It's called How the Nation Was Won by Graham Lowry. And it tells the good story, the story of how these people, were desperate for a place to organize a commonwealth, a place where they wouldn't be dependent on a king or a prince and wouldn't have to pay homage to royalty and nobility and have classes and things. And so they started the Puritan civilization up in New England. Well, that kind of a positive story has been so buried, so taken away from our children, I think, in favor of the bad white guy story, the plantation owners, Simon Legree, and everybody, that had any political power must have been a racist. And, it's very, very important to sustaining our country that we have positive role models. And the other thing I guess about my dad that I'm starting to realize is that he was groomed to be a servitor. And that's what we've learned from talking to Professor Hamamoto, is that there is the empire, the British Empire, any empire, but the empire we're dealing with now needs servitors. It needs people that are smart, but that are committed to doing the will of the elites that run the system. And that was what he was being groomed for, was to be an Irish-rooted, Irish-American servitor of the Anglo-Saxon establishment. And from having been in World War II and been on a ship with 134 of them died in the kamikaze attack, losing, shipmates, and knowing people from all walks of life. As you go through the military service, you're not just dealing with guys that go to Harvard and Loomis. You're dealing with guys from all kinds of backgrounds, and you learn to respect that. The toolmaker.
Huh? Guys like Bubba and guys like Chip and Bubba and other,
Yeah, I
just
mean, but if you're shipmates with these guys, you practically love them
yeah.
as you talk about, the feeling that we get when we work together in this project, and
Mhm.
that brings me back to what I think I really uh, got when George goes up and starts to work with you guys. See, I got to see how you guys work. And I got to see, the enthusiasm, and for you and Tom and David Underdown and everyone else who's been participating up there in your studio,
Mhm.
uh, and using my dad's name, and the theme of the Ospreys has been. I think it's been great because now what I get, is I get the entire package. It
Yeah,
comes
pretty
back to
much.
me, 10 times, because now I got you guys, I got Andy, and he's doing all this great production work for us, and I got, the charrette right here down the street from me, and people would come over to my house and paint my house for me and things. I mean, Andy did a lot of the work, but also Dave and Deborah and lots of other folks that were here just to help me get the studio together. Well, um,
Well, and I
I
think it's
I
starting.
just wanted to bounce back to you and say, well, I think I got a lot more out of this than I gave away. So you're
Well,
welcome.
there's a couple bad guys out here. There's somewhere between 1 and 100,000 bad guys out here, and we're all on the same team, just trying to make it happen together, right? This is all complementary work. So, in the sense that I think, I'm not even 2 years into this amazing experience, right? When I think how much I've learned and how much I've grown, and I mean, you yourself too, John, like, your first night starts with you meeting George at a bar and talking for 4 hours about your dad's story because you
Yeah.
thought it might be a little tip, right? You didn't think
Yeah,
like,
no, it wasn't that I was trying to give George a tip. No, I think it's important to get that straight. This was me, um, as I was winding down my law practice and just trying to figure out what really happened to my dad. I had watched some hearings from the church committee, the Frank Church Committee, the
huh?
House Select Committee on Assassinations, and
School play, you mean?
and
The church school play. Sorry, I'm teasing.
well, yeah, but you had Richard Helms there, and you had this guy holding this gun up there, saying, we can shoot these little darts at people, and I started thinking, maybe that was how they got the hepatitis into my dad. Maybe they shot him with a dart and said, "Hey, you're going to get sick, dude, and here's what you tell your wife." I
But
mean,
you never.
really,
Yeah,
that's my best theory right now of how they did it, but.
I think
Um,
pretty. I mean, we just thank you for being vulnerable to like have that hypothesis and theory with us and let us work it through with you because so much history has been exposed through that process, right? But I mean,
yeah.
it's
Yeah, and then his cancer, at the end of his life, they dumped me off at college in the fall of 1970, and then during the holidays when I was home, he was in the hospital, and we got a call while we're actually there at the dinner table, and was a doctor telling my mom, and she said, well. He's not going to get better. He's not going to be coming home.
well
And
when you told.
and that kind of a mystery, of why. And then it turns out on his death certificate when I eventually got that, it said cancer with metastasis. And metastasis means that is an indication that, hey, we may be dealing with a biological weapon here. And then I started reading Dr. Mary's Monkey, and that's something I got on my own too before I met George. So I was, in other words, pretty much on the trail and feeling very lonesome, not having anybody that could, bounce off ideas with.
But
And
you.
that was why I started watching George on YouTube. Back when he was just showing his hands, he was being very cautious back at the very beginning too, and eventually that went by the way, and he started showing his face and everything. since then just has developed. But that first meeting, maybe 3.5 years ago now with George, where we did, I mean, we talked about Shakespeare, we talked about my dad, we talked about politics, and I just realized that this was not a light encounter at all. This was somebody that I was going to be trying to be close to for a long time, and he's been very, very open to it. So no, but I don't ever think that I had any type of a claim on George. George belongs to the whole country. He's everywhere, and I'm just one of the fans.
Well, no, I mean, we're all, we're all whoever we are, right? I'm just like, I think we're at the beginning of something special, and, just talking about like, you've had careers and you've done a lot of work, no doubt, in your life, but, still engaging with you and the audience, seeing you and knowing you. It's like, we see a man, at the beginning of something new and something special, new, fresh experience. Right. And I think that's what all of us are feeling. And like, that night you met George, if someone would have said, "Hey, John, you're going to have, 2 YouTube channels and a book written about your father, 2 years from now," you'd probably be like, well, slow down, right? You probably would have thought, oh, there's going to be a whole book after, named after your dad, and also, 100-page color book and everything. That probably would have blown you away, I would imagine, right? You probably couldn't have expected that. That was, I mean, now, of course, we've come this far, but it's like, it's the beginning of a journey. And George, he's wherever he's going to be, and I think we, your experience and your commitment to your father's story is as much as, I'm committed to Team W. Everybody in there is committed to Team W, right? What makes Team W is that we are certain it's about the truth, and it's about a deeper spiritual commission or mission, right? And your dad's story and your commitment to finding the truth about your dad's story is what makes us, like, when a Patreon goes away or a YouTube channel goes away, we're still just smashing through it to the goal, right? Because the goal is the information, the truth, the research, and everything. And we know, John, that like everything could come or go in your life. You're finding the answer and you're getting Bissell, right? Over your, at this point, this is the deal here, right? We're getting Bissell or whatever it's going to be. And money, $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion doesn't matter. We are getting Bissell, or $1. We're getting Bissell. And he did it to your dad. And he's doing it to a lot of other people. And it ain't just Bissell, right? I say Bissell because I know that's really where the info is, in a sense. But there's so many Bissells. There's so many McDuffs. This story is now throughout history, and we're doing it. And that time where you guys had that time together and I was able to watch and learn was about learning, and it was about spirit, and it, like you said, you gave, like, people ask me who's my role model, right? And it's like, well, it's maybe someone you ain't ever heard of, right? I mean, like, Tom OLoughlin isn't, LeBron James or, whatever else, but he is my role model. And that, I mean, people I see in the comments, when I'm doing the Belton Road show with George, I know I get a little goofy sometimes and I get a little excited and everything else, but it's because you really filled us up, man. I mean, this story and this research really filled us up with truth and passion beyond what a YouTube channel can do, right? Or beyond what just like your favorite show can do for you. This is way more than just like my favorite show, and it is a great show. And I love watching it on my smartphone and my television and my Roku and all those things. But like, damn it, this is way more than your favorite show, right? I mean, like, we ain't just here to put on a show here, folks. So,
all right. Well, and thank you, and well said, because I do feel the same, absolutely. And I think the trepidation is, frankly, about my family itself. Very few of us left, but there are some that I would really. I'd be very timid about trying to open these subjects with certain people, and So I'm not, I've got things, some business I have to take care of with some relatives that I don't want to do it. And maybe at some point they'll just realize, they'll see the show and they'll say, "Oh, look what he's doing," and then maybe they'll figure it out on their own, because that kind of ancient history, that where things happened 40 years ago, and different people see them differently, and it can be very painful when it involves somebody that you love so much as your father or your mother or your sister. So enough said about that. Now let me get back to asking you questions.
Okay, sorry.
All right. Now you made a gift to me of this book, Theodor Herzl, The
Hmm.
Jewish State. And I'll tell you, I don't know Theodor Herzl very well. I haven't read the book yet. I appreciate it very much,
Well,
but it must have meant something in particular to you. And I thought I'd ask you to explain to me, what your encounter with Theodor Herzl, and what it is about this book that caused you to say, John needs to read this.
well, thanks, John, for getting me back on the research. Right, I gushed long enough. I took over half of the show here, but yeah, you're right. Let's get to it. It's the White Russians, man. How many White Russians have we circled around in the history in the book train? Right, how many White Russians are in the book train? And then
Yeah.
here in current events, how many people who run the levers of our society are third generation? Grandpa came from Ukraine, Belarus, Western Russia, that, Pale of Settlements there, right? Remember, even like a couple months ago, you were saying you were going to commit early this year to a real dive into the Pale of Settlements. I think you said that in December or January, that was going to be one of your focus areas this year.
Maybe a year or so ago, but
That
what
long?
happened, of course, the election just blew everything off
All
of my.
right.
I just turned in. What could we do? We had to drop everything and do our best to see that President Trump got reelected, and so I don't even remember making that commitment, but I
Well,
do. I did in my show about 2 years ago. I started uh, reading about the Pale, and putting maps up and things, and because anyway, what you're talking about is a phenomenon that I think people are going to have to understand, and that is that uh, people in that area, the crunch between Germany and Russia, from Lithuania, Poland, the Baltic states, Ukraine, all that whole area is formerly part of the Russian Empire that was called the Pale, and it was a place where for about 150 years Jewish people were encouraged to come to build communities, to build an economy which wasn't there before, so that the Russian Empire could develop that land. Anyway, what happened was, of course, there came a time when they didn't need the assistance in development anymore. They didn't like having these uh, Jewish people who were not at all integrated into the community and were, just different. And then the economic forces and political forces came into play, and pogroms started arising, either officially or unofficially, to drive people away from their new homeland, the homeland of 100 and some years for many of them. And so many of them ended up as refugees. Now, refugees, the vulnerability of these refugees was taken advantage of by the imperial powers, and specifically the British Empire, in bringing people such as the ancestors of a William Barr to London to study, to become fluent and able to negotiate in English, and to learn the particular business, whatever they wanted them to specialize in, whether it was oil or accounting, or something to do with economics or psychiatry, psychology, all of these various specialties that now, looking back, do we not see a pattern where people have been put into places that they could exercise power on behalf of the empire here in the United States? And a guy like Henry Kissinger is the epitome of that, where where are his roots? Where was he in World War II? And how did he get to be so powerful in this country? Um, I don't know if that is about White Russians so much as about the British Secret Service taking these people and turning them into servitors, and even not only them but their whole family, their children, their boys, their kids would then go into the same idea of, they never got to be free. They never got to just wonder what they might be in life. It was like they were told, you will do this, and that is the way that empires and nobility have always worked. Was, you're the first son, you will inherit the castle. You will be the Duke of York, and you will run the opium trade out of New York City. And they don't have a choice. They might be making a lot of money, having a lot of great sex, whatever they're getting off on, but they haven't really lived the way we Americans have had a chance to live, to get out and say, I don't know anybody, anything. I can do whatever I want. And, that is really the hidden key to success, is to follow your bliss, as Joseph Campbell says, to follow what really turns you on in your heart. Say, I want to be a musician. I want to be a sculptor. I want to be, and very few people are going to say, I want to be the best tax accountant that ever existed, but that's what a lot of folks get driven into, is to do that servitor role for their whole lives. And my dad was fortunate in that he was able to get out of it somehow, but sadly, by joining the FBI, he put himself into another trick box that was even, we could talk about that all night. But
like a thing that Bob Marley
is that these folks that have been taken out of a refugee situation are desperate and will do whatever they need to do, and probably be very, very loyal to the folks that saved them from a concentration camp or from a certain death.
Yep. Well, I mean, there's right. And, you're holding that book in a sense because George Webb started us down this path with good Mossad, bad Mossad. And, a lot of detractors that have a hard time with that and don't like his support of Israel, or say he's a supporter of Israel or whatever. But like it's so silly to try to encapsulate it like that. Right. What, the message of the book, and I've got my own little copy here, right? I got my copy's got a foreword from Dershowitz in it, of course, but we're dealing with Ukraine a lot these days. Okay. And we're dealing with even all of that area still, Minsk, Belarus. I know Serbia is not there per se. It's down quite a bit, but we're dealing with a lot of places still and things that are going on there that I don't think people properly understand. I don't know that we properly understand. And, all of Israel's early founding fathers were these Ukrainian, White Russian guys, like Joseph Trumpeldor is one. That's a name that I found interesting recently. Andy, if you want to give us Joseph Trumpeldor, right? And
let me jump in, because now I'm seeing where you're going with this, that even though they're Jewish, they're still White Russian. Am I understanding what you're saying correctly? In other words, the people that founded Israel, that came from Ukraine, I assume they are Jewish. And so therefore, if they're also White Russians, that's a perspective I hadn't encountered before, but I think there's some wisdom there.
Well,
Is that
the whole deal was, he wrote this in 1896, right? And it was the Dreyfus Affair and the persecution, and like you were saying, and all that, right? And it's like, you guys, let's just get together and go somewhere. They're never going to like us here. They're never going to accept us. Let's go to Argentina. Oh, you don't want to go to Argentina? All right, let's go to Madagascar. Yeah, you don't want to go to Madagascar? Oh,
Kenya. Wasn't Kenya the other one?
There were a lot of ideas, right? And I don't know, I'm still learning. Of course, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just a little osprey trying to, catch my wings on this. This is some stuff that I just got into, okay. I've learned and followed you guys and tried to just go and keep digging. And it's like, oh, somebody piped in, was, oh, let's go to the Holy Land. Doesn't that make sense? We might as well go to the Holy Land if we're all going to go somewhere. That's a pretty good place for us to go. Hey, nothing's going on over there. They got a deal. Let's go talk to the Ottomans. They're in trouble, blah, blah, blah. And I was going to say, cut to page 96, I think, or 94 of the book you're holding there. And I think it'll encapsulate really like what I'm trying to say in terms of what I think we're dealing with here. And I mean, I don't, they try to tell it like it's anti-Semitic, but I really don't think it is. I mean, I love Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel. I love the books of the Bible. I love the Torah. I mean, I read it, if not every day, quite a few days a week. I feel very passionately Jewish, and I don't think I'm being anti-Semitic to say that Israel, and people complain about our little network that we don't say enough about Israel or whatever. And it's like the Jewish company, and I know it's called the Jewish company. Do you see it right there, the Jewish company?
Yeah, you want me to read that?
Yeah, I was gonna say the first two paragraphs, maybe not even, will probably, I think, tell you a lot, because it's like you'll see what they did and what it is.
Let's see.
Remember when I had you read the wrong page of that book, John?
I think I underlined a few bits on it there, but it's the beginning.
Oh, is it 96 though? Is it?
Is it 96? You see it?
Or was it 69?
69, I believe, John.
Well,
the idea which I have developed in this pamphlet is a very old one. It is the restoration of the Jewish state. The world resounds with outcries against the Jews, and these outcries have awakened the slumbering idea. I wish it to be clearly understood from the outset that no portion of my argument is based on a new discovery. I have discovered neither the historic condition of the Jews nor the means to improve it. In fact, every man will see for himself that the materials of this structure I am designing are not only in existence, but actually already in hand. If, therefore, the attempt to solve the Jewish question is to be designated by a single word, let it be said to be the result of an inescapable conclusion rather than that of a flighty imagination. I must, in the first place, guard my scheme from being treated as utopian. Well, I'll stop there.
Well, in the table of contents in the front, I think I might even squared it for you. I think if Andy had you read 69, I think it really is 90. It's the Jewish company. Like at this point, I know we only have a few minutes left, but like my contention really at this point is that William Barr is an employee of the Jewish company.
Okay.
Warren Buffett is an employee of the Jewish 98. I'm sorry. Warren Buffett is an employee in the Jewish company. There's this guy Blixith. There's Einschutz, who owns that AEG, all sorts of this Einschutz company. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Like, I believe we have a number of individuals who are working for this. Who is the cabal? I think this is the cabal.
Oh, well, this is big.
City of London thing,
I have to study this, and we've only got 3 minutes left. But
I know. Sorry,
I need to just try to encapsulate what you're saying. Is that in Herzl's book, he creates this thing called the Jewish Company, and he has rules for it and what it's going to do. And I won't get into the details, but just to say that it's a very detailed outline of what he thinks a Jewish company would be. You're suggesting that actually still exists, and that there are people right now that are working within the structure of this thing that was created 120 years ago or so. And
I believe the country is subject right now to the control of the Jewish company, and they're controlling us and ruling us through our media, the control of our elections, and all the things that we research and all the stuff that we do. And this isn't to say that it's anti-Semitic or anything, other than that's a company clearly indicated there. Hey, we're a group of guys. We're in the Pale of Settlements. We're going to group up. We're going to make a company. Ultimately, 50 years later, after Herzl's gone, they create the state of Israel, which is kind of like a country to give a nice, glossing over for the company. But at this point, like, they don't even need to be in Israel. We see them all over the place, right? They're running our country. They own the Dominion patents, all the other things, and they're William Barr. Like, why does William Barr get to be everywhere? And I think it's Because it's that company, man. And yeah, it's page 98, I guess. I'm sorry. We had you on all the different pages. We wasted all that time.
But you know what this tells me, Aaron, is we just have to get back together and flesh this out. It's the beginning of an exploration that I think we need to do. Can we trace that? Does your theory hold water, as my cousin Vinny would say? I tend to think that it does. But like with everything else we do, there's a lot of homework to be done to make that case. And so I need to read it, and I'm going to be back in touch with you to try to flesh that out, because it's a very, very interesting idea, and certainly there's a lot of what we would call circumstantial evidence that this does exist, but to actually prove it would be politically explosive. It would just, everybody would go, oh my God, there's no Democrats, there's no Republicans. It's just, what is your part in the company scheme?
Yeah, I was gonna say, Andy, I sent you that little video. If you wanted to get there in the last 2 minutes, I could show you the little certificates that I believe exist. Fast forward, yeah, right there. Go to that certificate. I believe those certificates exist, and that whoever holds those certificates are the masters of the universe. And that they're somewhere. I even brought my, there you stop it right there. I would expect that, those, and I mean, you probably have great legal insight on like the importance of documents and historical documents, and how, like, especially George was talking the other day about how somebody like Kissinger, he'll respect this old stuff that we all kind of think is stupid. But if Kissinger sees the document, he knows who's got the document. He's gonna go with that, So it's like, I think those documents I don't think one of those has been lost. I think they're all.
You're opening a whole new chapter in research for me, because this is it's interesting, and it's exciting to think about who can figure out what really, where did Israel come from? Suddenly, boom, 1949, boom, 48. There's a new country in the world. How did that happen? Boom.
John, you open that for me. I'm just an osprey from the chat that got a chance to jump in and start chalking and, chirping or whatever they're eking. And you opened it for me. And this is how we do it, right? All of us have our little things. I don't do microbiology. I don't do S proteins, a lot of things that other people
either, buddy.
Right. But like, this, I got my hands into this. I was like, I can do this for the team. I can do compound searches, and I feel I can add a little bit here, and we all add our little bit, but it's just, I'm no expert, but I think we got something here is why I was like,
I spent a lot of time looking at the Vatican, as you know, and Operation Gladio and all of that stuff, but I haven't spent any time looking into your subject here of the Jewish company and the ideas of Theodor Herzl. It's all related in some ways, but I think we'll leave that for the next time we get together.
All right. Remind me of the Nostra Aetate, I think 1968 is when the Jews and the Catholics came together, and the Catholics agreed officially that the Jews didn't kill Jesus. That was like the official date where the Pope, signed that the Jews weren't the ones who killed Jesus. So we can start with that next time or whatever, because I think that's a very important date of where they all kind of teamed up.
Okay. Well,
I know there's so much to talk about. I love you, John. I love this being part of the Screaming Osprey so much. So thanks so much. Hour just flew by,
It sure did, and thanks so much for you, and thanks for the book, and for the other book you gave me, Blueprint for Revolution by Popovic.
Don't read that. Put that. Use that if you run out of toilet paper. That's for when toilet paper's out of the store. You don't need that garbage. That's just to prove it exists.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks so much, John. Thank you, everyone.